Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Divine Feminine Wisdom. Today's going to be the second episode in the Free Your Soul podcast, and this topic is specifically going to be about timelines. So, jumping timelines, quantum leaping. This is a concept that has become pretty popular in the spiritual community, but I think it's very practical in nature as well. So, as you may or may not know, we as human beings, as frequencies, as energies, as vibrations that are just materialized, we have a physical form, but we also have an energetic body. This energetic body can go through upgrades in the same way that our computers and our phones can go through upgrades. So, a lot of the times, these quantum leaps and these shifts in timelines and realities can happen during retrograde season. We are at a time where Mercury has just stationed direct. Now, Mercury retrograde is not this big negative thing that it's being blown up to be quite recently. I think that has a lot to do with people just not really having a deep understanding of what astrology is and looking at the retrograde energies as a way to blame those shadow energies that they're experiencing, because it's easier to externalize blame than to look at why your shadows are still in the shadow instead of coming to light. So quantum leaping and timeline jumping has so much to do with our ability to look at our shadows, at our ability to move more into the light, meaning expanding our consciousness. That's all moving into the light means, expanding our consciousness. And this is the way that we live the life of our dreams, that we live the lives that we desire, as opposed to just living a life that feel like it doesn't really fit us, a life where we seem to be at war with ourselves. Now, there are periods where we need to go through certain things in order to build ourselves up. A lot of people call this the dark night of the soul, but to focus on the topic of quantum leaping and timeline jumping, this has to do with a shift in your reality. This is you essentially leaping to another timeline. This concept is very much founded in the astrophysicist idea of string theory. You can look up string theory, how there are these different chords, different timelines. This is also deeply grounded in the belief of parallel or adjacent universes, that we are not just living one life, that we are living many parallel lives that are very similar to the lives that we're living. This is a bit different than the past life experiences. Parallel lives has to do with many different versions of our current life that we are experiencing. So when you're taking a quantum leap or shifting, you're shifting into a timeline in your current life where you're living a life that's more fully aligned with what you want. Basically, living the life of your dreams, leveling up, upgrading your life. We hear these terms thrown around. And again, if you can start to, of course, the human body, the human soul is more complex than a computer gadget, but our computers, our phones are extensions of this complex process of what it is to be a multidimensional being in this 3D human realm. So as a multidimensional being, we have the ability to shift our timeline. So if you don't like what's going on in your life, you don't like a relationship, you have the ability to shift that, to change that. If you don't like the job you have, if you don't like the area you're living in, you have the power and ability to shift that. So the thing about quantum leaping and timeline shifting is it takes a certain level of courage, even maybe fear, to push you over the edge. You can think of this in tarot deck. You can think of this as the Fool card when you're taking that leap of faith, when you're leaping into a situation that's totally new. I actually had a vision of this, which is what prompted this podcast episode that I'm channeling right now. And the dream was basically myself and other people who I was connected to jumping off of something very high. And there was just something that I was able to do to shift the timelines. As a channeler, I'm someone who helps other people shift timelines, basically make those changes in their lives. A lot of people get stuck in certain situations in their life because they're stuck in old, outdated timelines. Have you ever met someone and it just seems like they're still living and like their mindset is the same as it was in high school, or a lot of the things that they're surrounded with is very much the same. Maybe they've been doing the same maybe they've been doing the same thing for years, for decades even. If you look at this at an energetic level, this is someone just being on that same timeline. We are meant to shift our timelines. We are meant to leap into realities that are better for us. That as we experience life, we make decisions, and we base our decisions based off of what's happening in our lives. Now, there are so many things that go into why people get stuck in this sort of limbo stage where they're not quite shifting into a new timeline. They're not getting upgraded, sort of like having a phone. And instead of the person upgrading their phone, maybe they're using outdated software. So now they're running into more issues. Maybe their phone's stopping more. Maybe there's more delays. Again, to better understand these energetic and astrophysical concepts, it can be very helpful to model it after what we see in our phones and with our computers. If you want the most up-to-date, high-speed stuff, you have to upgrade. You have to get new phones. So now that I feel like I've painted a picture of the symbolism that's behind this quantum leap and timeline shift, I want to talk a little bit more about what's available to the human collective, because this ability to leap into a new timeline is not something that just a few people, as much as people like to make it seem like the elite have more control over a lot of things. We are all sovereign beings. It's just a matter of claiming your sovereignty and avoiding the many, many, many distractions that are here on this planet right now. And just, moving forward with the life that feels the most authentic and genuine to you. So there is an opportunity to do that. If you feel like there was any instances of instability in your life, maybe you've been struggling with finances like a lot of people have been doing during this pandemic. Maybe you are struggling with a job. A lot of people are overworked and underpaid. They used to give incentives for extra work, and since the pandemic, a lot of those things have just gone away. The world as a whole is struggling, but there is this, I want to say, and this opportunity, because anytime there's a struggle and a really heavy energy, it's making room, it creates space, it expands you to add new things into your life. So those who have been expanding, pushing yourself past the limits, maybe you're seeing that the job that you have been working isn't quite fulfilling. Maybe some people may have been laid off, and seeing how easy it was for that job to replace them after you put there's a lot of people during this pandemic energy that realize, and it's not just during this pandemic, anytime there's any kind of hardships, you can put decades into a job, all of your time, all of your energy, just to get laid off and replaced in a matter of weeks. That doesn't feel good. So a lot of people are stepping more into ways of being financially independent from these big businesses and from these systems, and creating their small businesses. This is the realm of the small businesses. So a lot of people are shifting into those kind of timelines where they are managing their own successful business instead of working for other people. Maybe people are leaping away from situations where they felt stuck because they were living lives or working jobs or with people that they really didn't feel connected to, but for some reason, maybe from family pressure, societal pressure, maybe relationship kind of pressure. Maybe some of you were stuck in relationships because you had a child with someone, or stuck at a job because you just needed to work at that moment. This is an opportunity to allow those old timelines to fall, where your life was based off of things that seem to be out of your control, and make the conscious decision to move your life forward in a way that feels the most authentic to you, like I have said before. So that's what's available for these timeline shifts and leaps. A way to really help ground yourself with this energy is look at the struggles. You can make two lists. One can be the current struggles, the things that have happened in the last decade of your life, the last few years, that really didn't seem to, maybe things that weren't helpful. Now, of course, everything has a deeper lesson and a deeper meaning. But if you have been experiencing a pattern or the same thing over and over again, and you're not noticing any kind of change, or it's bringing you down, you really don't have to stay stuck in these negative patterns, right? If this is your third relationship and you're getting cheated on in your relationship, then it's time to release that old pattern, because there's something that is going on with your energy, around your energy, and the timeline that you're in, where there's not anything new coming in. And that's why you're experiencing the same things on repeat. So this is an opportunity to release those old stagnant energies. That's what timeline and quantum leaping is about. There's a big aspect of new things coming in, but the biggest thing that makes it new is those old timelines, those old experiences, those old situations just falling and being released from your life. So that's what this quantum leaping and this time shift is all about. This is happening after the June 3rd energy. Mercury stationing retrograde and Mercury ending their retrograde and stationing direct in the sign of Taurus brings a very grounded and stable energy, a celebratory energy as well. A lot of people will have the opportunity to be celebrating something major in the month of June. And if you are doing so, then you know that you have successfully leapt into a timeline that's going to resonate more with those things that you want. And the other advice that I can give is really get grounded in what you want. A lot of people want things because of the people around them, right? So not just looking at those things that you want in your life, but look at the motives behind it. What is your motivation for what you want, right? Do you want a certain job because you're making a certain amount of money? Is it possible that you can make that amount of money in another job? So really getting detailed about your life, not detailed in a way where you're not making space for new things to come in your life. Like the example I just gave, if someone wants to work a certain job because they have their mindset on making a certain amount of money, they can get really specific and detailed about this job. But if it doesn't really fulfill you or bring you happiness, or you think that just making that money is going to bring that fulfillment, you may learn 5 or 10 years down the road that that's something that doesn't really fill you up. Maybe you have the opportunity to meet those material needs that you want met without working or spending a lot of time and energy, because when you're working your career, your job, you're putting the most of your time and energy into it. So you should be spending most of your time and energy doing something that you love, and that is a possibility if you can believe it is. A lot of people don't believe that's possible. I've heard people say that people who do things that they love are lucky. It's a little bit more than luck, right? It's willpower, it's drive. Everyone who does something that they love, they didn't just have it handed to them. A lot of people had to resist other people's suggestions for their life in order to live one that feels the most authentic. So there is a possibility of reaching an optimal timeline, and that optimal timeline is your dreams. We have certain dreams and desires in life because our soul is pulling us, our energetic body is pulling us towards these things. It's sort of like when you're thinking about radio waves, right? There's a way to, when you get the station to the perfect point and it's crystal clear, you're hearing everything crystal clear. But when you're deviating a little bit, maybe you went from 96.5 to like 96.8, and now you're getting a little bit more static, right? So that's an example of someone maybe not being at their optimal timeline. So maybe they're experiencing things that feel more staticky. Maybe they're experiencing more blocks, more war, more resistance in life, instead of that clarity that comes when you're right at that station where you want to be, where you're hearing things clearly. So there's an opportunity and an ability to shift into your optimal timeline right now in the month of June to really figure out those things that you want and desire, your motives behind why you want and desire certain things in your life, and leap and shift into that energy. So if you have been having dreams, if you're not familiar with tarot, if you look at the Fool card, there is someone usually standing on a cliff in a traditional Rider-Waite Fool card, and they're about to leap. Not leaping off the cliff as in, killing themselves or committing suicide. This is just very symbolic of taking a leap of faith and jumping into a new timeline. And think about these two new timelines is, even though there are things that you want pulled into your life, there's so much of an unknown element because this is a timeline you have not been in, right? So when you leap into a new timeline, there may be people who were in your life that you once really got along with that now just don't sit right with you, or there's just something that you may feel repulsed or repelled by certain people who you once really got along with, and then vice versa. There could have been people that you really didn't like. In a way to know that you have just shifted or leapt in a timeline is maybe you're getting along with them a little bit better. So you'll start to see different things shifting in your reality when you do take that quantum leap. That's why people have things like the Mandela Effect, where people remember things differently. You may have different memories than what's in your reality right now. That's another big sign that you have shifted or went into a different timeline, went into what other people may call a parallel universe. This is not always a physical thing. This is first an energetic thing, and then one day you wake up and things just seem shifted, and eventually you may hold the memories of both. But eventually you may just forget the old timeline so that you can be more fully embedded in the new timeline. So pay attention to your reality. Pay attention to what you are experiencing. Pay attention to your relationships. Pay attention to opportunities. If you're starting to notice changes in your reality, your timeline, and there are new opportunities, when you take a quantum leap, you're never going to see an old opportunity and go back to it. That's not how quantum leaping works. It's not going back to old timelines. There is an opportunity, like I said, there is that in-between space when you're in between timelines, when you have the choice, because we always have the choice and we always have the free will to go back into old timelines. And a lot of people decide to do that because it feels more comfortable. It feels more at home. Like I said, there's a little bit of an element of fear and anxiety when you're shifting into a new timeline because it's something new. For some people, if you are shifting, making a major shift into a timeline, things may just seem like they're really, really falling apart for you in the weeks leading up to this timeline shift. So just stick with it. That when things seem to be falling apart, that does not mean that you need to go back to your old life or the way things were. Just that's the period where faith really takes you a long way. Whatever gives you a sense of grounding, whether that's having faith in a higher power or just, I really recommend being connected to your own soul, your own spirit, so that you can see that this is you. Your higher self is just this higher energetic version of you that is assisting you in living out the life of your highest potential, because that is what that is the ultimate goal when being here on earth. And there's so much that goes into why people do not have lifetimes where they live out their highest potential. It could be maybe they were more weighed down by karma, but even someone weighed down by the most karma still has the opportunity to release themselves of that. So just keeping all this in mind, when you have those new opportunities coming up in the next few weeks, make sure you're paying attention to them, because those are likely opportunities that will help you live the life of your highest desire. If you are choosing to shift into a new timeline, which of course is a recommendation, will you keep an old, are you going to have an iPhone 3 your whole life without ever upgrading it, and now it's so delayed and it can't do, all of the upgraded things? No, this is the same kind of thing when you're thinking about your soul energy. You want it to be upgraded. You want it to be fresh. You want it to be high speed. You want it to be new. So just paying attention to all of that. I have another podcast that I want to do on the connection between 5G and 5D and how that relates to the expansion of consciousness. But I'll save that for another video, since this one was about this quantum leaping and timeline shifts. But I think I'm going to leave the podcast here, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in another video. So stay tuned for the next episode, and I wish you all a happy and comfortable, but also challenging and fulfilling leap into a newer timeline.